So I was working at Disney, and behind my register bank, because there's 3 like spread out, they're just like register banks that have like 3 or 4 registers at them. Behind me is the pick-a-brick wall. So that's where all the like individual colored like pieces of brick are that people can pick and build and put it in a cup. Somebody left a backpack there. Like they forgot a backpack. One of my managers comes up to me and specifically singles me out and like has me lean back because there's like this little shelf behind us, and he's like leaning over to talk to me, and he's like, Paige, there's a backpack over there and we have to bring in the bomb squad. and I was like, oh, okay. So then he left, and I keep bringing people out. I'm like terrified that something's going to happen, and he comes back and he pulls me back and he's like, they're going to bring in a bomb sniffing dog. If the dog lays down, run. I was like, what the fuck? So I'm ringing up a customer, freaking the fuck out, thinking that I'm going to explode in my minimum wage job. And I get a secret shopper. And I don't do the questions because I am sweating. I am so terrified. And then like put out these fucking stanchions to like close the the pick a brick section. And everyone's like, why is the pick a brick section closed? And he's like, don't tell anyone. And I'm like, I'm the only one that knows that we could all die in holy fire. And I got dinged on the secret shopper. And one of the managers scolded me. I was like, I was worried I was going to blow up. And they're like, oh, yeah, he could have probably not told you that. I was like, oh, you think? You think he could have not told me that I was probably going to explode if the dog fucking lays down? Dog didn't lay down. It was just a fucking backpack. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Welcome
to the 23rd episode of Beer and Fear.
To the 23rd episode of Beer and Fear.
Is there an echo in here?
And it is my turn to welcome people.
Sorry. I did it. I did do it last time. Go ahead. My bad. Start over. No, go ahead. Welcome them. Go ahead. I feel bad now.
Welcome to Beer and Fear. This is episode 23.
2-3.
My name is Zach.
My name is Paige.
This week, we're talking about spontaneous human combustion.
Isn't that interesting?
It's always been a fascinating topic that I haven't done too much research on.
Have never looked into it before, so I was very interested to look into it this time around to figure out how it happens.
It's very cool. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's ever been a genuine fear of mine, but I'm sure it's...
Have you seen those posts that are just like, what is something that childhood made you think you would fear more as an adult? Mm-hmm. Quicksand and spontaneous human combustion were the 2 things for me.
Wow.
I was like, wow. And then I was also like, where are the free drugs? I was always told that strangers would just hand them out, and it seems very hard to get a hold of them. So strange.
But yeah, as we find out as adults, those things just don't happen.
No, I'm very upset about the quicksand.
We will talk about a few cases of unfortunate circumstances.
Human ignition.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Not the R. Kelly kind.
Of human ignition.
Remixed in the ignition. Sorry.
People unlucky that lit up in flame. Mm-hmm. Recap since last episode. Talk about anything?
I started a new job. I interviewed, got hired on the spot in a very fast interview. Then I was just kind of like, okay, do I have the job? I have the job. All right, I'm employed here.
It's next week, you said?
Yes, I start next week. I'm waiting for a phone call from my new boss to figure out a date that I start my training. So I do that. Nothing much else.
And it pays more?
Yes.
And you'll like it a lot more?
Hopefully.
And it's a normal schedule?
Yes, instead of overnights.
Amazing.
But then I also thought about maybe keeping the overnight job and just like making a lot of money. So I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. I'll figure it out. I'll make a decision eventually. But that's about it. Nothing different. Oh, I shut down one of my fish tanks. So now I just have my my 2 leopard geckos and my 2 tarantulas.
Just 4 pets?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I went down.
It's quite a shift from a couple months ago.
I know. I was at like 17. I rehomed them.
That's good.
I miss my bird.
I miss your bird too.
Oh,
That's a cute
Lemon.
bird.
Such a good baby.
You reminded me. I was watching the. I don't know what they're called. A press conference. That's what they're called. I was watching the press conference this afternoon. And they talked about one of the executive orders that is being signed today.
Yeah.
And it talks about employees who have the right to refuse working at an establishment, whether this is one that they've already worked at or if they're trying to get a job.
Employers?
Employees refusing to work at a certain business due to the potential of exposure to COVID-19.
Okay.
So that made me think about your job and how you said that there were
at
some
Amazon.
cases at
Yeah.
Amazon. So
Several.
under this, from what I understood, under this order, you would be able to file for unemployment even though you had this job because there is an occupational hazard of you potentially.
My mom told me to report them to OSHA
Yeah.
because they've had so many, and I know they're not social distancing.
Well, I'm sure OSHA is just over.
Oh, probably extremely overwhelmed, and I can't imagine that they'd probably be able to do much about $1 billion company.
But he's trying to put something in place that pretty much guarantees you unemployment or at least not having to work at an establishment like that and put yourself at risk in order to
pay bills. Yeah, that's good.
That's pretty neat.
That's nice. Well, isn't that a part of his $1 trillion package, like his relief deal? And people are like already trying to get him to like lower it, and he's just like, "Fuck you."
That was one of the things I want to talk about. I know we say it's not a political podcast.
It is not.
We try not to make it political, but
it doesn't hurt to talk about the news of the day.
I don't know if you guys noticed on Wednesday the crazy thing that happened last Wednesday. Did you guys see that? That's pretty neat. I'm very happy. I'm very optimistic, as I'm sure a lot of Americans are.
I told you. I messaged you. Chelsea and I were crying.
Yeah, I was watching the whole thing too. It was very emotional. I'm still kind of speechless, and I've been actually following, trying to follow things a lot more. That's what I'm going to do. Hopefully, this 4 years, I'm going to follow politics a little more closely to have a better understanding of what happens in
my goal is to actually
country.
read the bills that get introduced because those motherfuckers be shifty, putting in little little side
stipulations and stuff.
little side things that are just like, okay, that makes no sense. Why the fuck should we sign this?
I do want to, like, ever since Wednesday, I know there's only been 3, but I've been watching the press. What do they call them? Press meetings. Press something.
With the press secretary.
Yeah, what are they called? Press. I just said them. I just said what it was, and I forget. A press meeting.
Yeah.
I've been watching the press meetings.
There's probably a different word for it, but we know what you're saying.
Yeah. And I hope to follow those. If they're going to, like, make it a daily thing, I'd like to.
Well, it's nice that there's actually hopefully this new press secretary is actually good.
She's funny. She seems.
It's a briefing, right? Press secretary briefing?
Yeah, something like that. Whatever the name is. But you can tell the whole mood has shifted in the room there. It's kind of relieving.
Oh, conference.
Press conference. Yeah, news conference. And I can tell a lot of the administration, it feels like there's a giant weight off their shoulders.
Well, personally, I just think it's a level of hope, which no one's felt in a very long time.
Yeah.
I was talking to Chelsea, and I was like, is this what hope feels like? Because it's been a while since I felt that.
What else? Oh, I went to a restaurant called Mater's yesterday. It's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It is a German restaurant that I think has been around since, 1902. Yeah, this picture I took, this little plaque, Mater's 1902.
Fancy.
They've been around for a long time. Authentic German cuisine. They have a really, really good drink list. They have plenty of German beer that you can order. Really, really good handcrafted cocktails. I ordered this this old fashioned, and it's this recipe that's been around for like 100 years, And it was unlike any old fashioned I've ever had before. It was kind of on the sweeter side.
I was going to ask. It looked like you got a cocktail.
It didn't look like an old fashioned. Yeah,
not at all.
But it was good. It was tasty. Stuff got this other drink with champagne in it.
Ooh.
That tasted very good too. Really good cocktail list. Really good German food. They got a bunch of wine there too. And then the whole atmosphere of the restaurant is just really, really cool. Like the decor. I showed you some of these pictures, I think, already. And there's a lot of history there. There's the hallway that leads to the restrooms that has pictures of famous people who have dined at the restaurant. There's plaques that they put all across the restaurant, too. Like in one of the booths, you can see there's a few plaques that are set up.
What it's like, celebrity ate here.
This person sat here, or this person ate here. There is a chair. Will Ferrell's chair. Will Ferrell's chair. So he sat there.
In 2011?
In 2011.
That's funny.
September 15, 2011. Will Ferrell sat there and ate. A lot of cool stuff. Really, really nice stained glass. And a lot of the stuff that's up here is authentic, too. Like the suits of armor and the swords and everything that they have all across the restaurant is authentic. I think the waitress said the place was insured for like $35 million.
What the fuck?
Yeah, there's a lot of history at this restaurant.
That's cool.
So, great food. If you like German cuisine, even if you don't, I'd suggest giving it a shot. Mater's in Milwaukee. So that was nice. I got my COVID shot today.
Yes.
That's also another.
And now you are going to grow an identical conjoined twin.
I will get a head on one of my arms.
Yes. How big is the needle?
I didn't look. I didn't want to freak myself out.
Gotcha. Good idea.
But I've seen other people get the vaccine like on the news. Needles like fucking like that.
Oh.
Yeah, and they put the whole needle in your arm. It's crazy. I don't know. I don't know.
No.
I don't know how they do that.
No.
I'm sure it was only
I'm
like
gonna throw up.
It was still kind of a long needle. I'm sure. Maybe I was over exaggerating. That's a little big.
That's like a $5 foot long. We're talking Subway numbers here.
But it is a long needle.
Made me nervous.
Because she said her arm hurt a lot. Because they put it too high up, and that's what I was worried about. And that looks a little too high.
It looks a little high.
Yeah.
Usually shots are like here.
Yeah. They measure it's like a two-finger thing, and then that's where you're supposed to put it.
In your sweet meat right here.
Yeah, your sweet meat.
Your sweet meat. I'm feeling my biceps again.
Oh, that's been my week.
So Zach's gonna grow another head. And that head is the one that I'm going to do makeup on. I'm excited.
I'm excited for a second head or
Me too.
A third arm.
My question is, where will that head grow? Like where the shot was injected? And then does that head have access to your lungs? And will that head be sentient? So will it have a brain?
I don't think.
Or will it just be a face?
I don't think it would. I mean, it wouldn't need my lungs. It wouldn't breathe for me. I think the oxygenated blood would just travel throughout the head circulatory system. I think it would have a separate brain, but I don't think it would be a very good one.
I don't think it'd be sentient.
I don't think it'd be a very good one. No. I think it'd be pretty, like, kind of like a vegetable head.
Yeah. You can name him Carrot.
I could.
Yeah.
I'd prefer a third arm because I would be way more productive at my job.
That makes me uncomfortable to think about.
I would be way more.
When people say third arm, they're usually referring to.
I would be a way better drummer, and I could use my third arm for other things.
Oh, come on.
But mainly the drumming. So we'll see what grows out of my arm.
Fucking nasty.
In a few weeks.
It cannot be convenient to have an arm growing out of your arm.
No.
If you had an arm growing out of like
it would, like your torso or something. Yeah.
You could do stuff with that.
Exactly.
But then would it be left-handed or right-handed?
I would want another right-handed.
What if it was just ambidextrous? Like it
like
swiveled.
2 thumbs?
No, it's swiveled. Like it could switch its wrist.
And then it would just like grip this way?
Yeah.
I don't like that. That'd be creepy.
It would be weird.
My arm is in a little bit of pain. I can feel it's like a dull pain.
That's what happens.
Like an ache.
That's just needles in general.
I think so, yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, let's...
Spontaneous human combustion. Combustion. What is the beer you picked?
I don't know, my laptop's not working.
Okay. Well,
Can't tell you.
Well, guess that's it. That's the episode.
All right.
Have a good day.
Good day.
Because you know what fixes a laptop? Mindlessly slamming keys.
So, I tried to get this beer called Autumnal Fire, or Autumnal. How do you say that word? Autumnal? Autumnal? I think it's autumnal.
Like autumn?
Like autumn.
Oh, autumnal?
Yeah. Autumnal. Autumnal.
Because it's like autumnal equinox? Autumnal.
or autumnal.
I'm going to look it up. I don't think autumnal sounds right.
I don't think it's autumnal. I think it's autumnal.
I'm looking it up.
It's just it's weird how you have a different emphasis by adding 2 letters at the end of the word. Yeah, autumnal. Okay. So I tried to get this beer called Autumnal Fire by Capital Brewery out of Middleton, Wisconsin.
Oh, cool. Something that's not Chicago.
Right. It was a Doppelbock. It got a score of 91 on beer on Beer Advocate. Almost said Beer and Fear.
I saw that.
Outstanding. And it was ranked 4,697 overall.
Wow.
So that's
good
up
numbers.
there. The Binnies and Wheeling was the only one that showed they had stock.
Where is Wheeling?
Wheeling is closer towards Chicago. It's like just east and a little north of here. I think it's sort of like
It's
north.
not close to Waukegan, is it?
No, I think it's a little northwest of Arlington Heights.
Oh, okay.
I think I went there last time for one of our other beers.
I think you did.
I called them. They said they were out.
Okay.
So that's a no-go. So I went with a beer called Scarlet Fire.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
By Tighthead Brewing Co.
I kind of like this one more.
Scarlet Fire, Tighthead Brewing Co. It is not out of Chicago, but it is out of Illinois. It's on 161 North Archer Avenue in Mundelein, Illinois. So Mundelein, I think that's like a southwestern suburb. I forgot. I looked up
because I know
Mundelein
Archer
was,
Avenue.
Well, there's an Archer Avenue in Chicago.
Yeah.
Mundelein.
The Archer Avenue goes pretty far.
Oh, no, I'm totally wrong. It's a very north end suburb. It is northwest of Lake Zurich, east of Crystal Lake, northwest of Elgin. So way over there. Just due southwest of Waukegan.
Oh, that's up there.
Yeah, it's up there. So that's Mundelein. Tighthead Brewing Company is a craft brewery located in Mundelein, a suburb of Chicago. Our brew pub is a neighborhood institution where friends and families can meet up and enjoy great music, wonderful company, and the best beer in town. Since we opened our doors in 2011, we have poured our heart and soul into every glass. Stop in and taste what we're talking about.
Ooh.
Maybe?
I'll taste you.
This was founded by Bruce Durr in 2010. D-I-R is his last name.
Good old Bruce Durr.
In 1993, Molly, Bruce's fiance, now wife, gave Bruce a homebrew kit for Christmas.
This is a lot like...
This sounds like that other beer.
Yeah, Tangerine Twister.
Yeah,
Tornado
Tangerine
or
Tornado,
whatever.
yep.
What's the brewery called?
From Tangerine Tornado?
Yeah. Isn't it start with like Devil or something?
Heretic Brewing and Distilling.
Heretic.
Heretic. I don't know, say heretic. Bruce's brother, Doug, had already caught the homebrew bug and suggested it as a good gift. He was right. The obsession was born. Already an avid gardener and canner, Bruce found a new platform to expand his deep-seated creative personality. After moving to Mundelein to start a family, Bruce quickly involved himself with a group of local homebrewers who eventually founded and became the Babel Homebrew Club of Lake County.
That's adorable.
I didn't look into that. I don't know if that's still a thing.
Is your phone charger over here?
Yes, right there. Bruce was passionate about reading books and periodicals on brewing. Eventually, he became a certified beer judge and started judging and organizing homebrew competitions.
Hey.
Production began in the brewery in insert trivia answer here. That's what it says on their website. It's in parentheses in all caps. Insert trivia answer here.
Okay.
So I don't know where production began. At that time, Billy Oakes, a local homebrew supply shop manager, prolific brewer, and friend of Bruce's, was hired and became a partial owner in the company. Billy is a graduate of the American Brewers Guild Brewing School and apprenticed at the Ram Brewery in Wheeling, Illinois. Billy manages all aspects of the brewery operations and is the head brewer. Oh yeah, the name Tighthead. Bruce played rugby for 13 years, mostly as a tight head prop, a position that involves being in the front row of the scrum supporting the hooker. The explanation
Always
is...
support your hookers.
Always support your hookers. Get that on a t-shirt.
It is the oldest profession, and it deserves respect.
The explanation is too long for this story, but we encourage you to research and understand the origin of the name and become a fan of great sport.
Okay.
So the beer, Scarlet Fire, and they designed the name as Scarlet less than sign fire.
Okay.
So Scarlet, that thing,
okay.
fire, is how it looks on the can and on their website. It's an Irish style red ale.
Okay.
The name is a reference to the playful improvisational transition between Grateful Dead's Scarlet begonias, and Fire on the Mountain.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't look those things up. Scarlet less than Fire, has a nice balance of malt sweetness from caramel malt and subtle toasty notes from roasted barley. The beer is brewed with American ale yeast, and the hops are East Kent Goldings, paying tribute to its heritage as an Irish red ale.
Okay.
To talk about Irish red ale.
Yeah, please.
It is a type of pale ale, so top fermented, warm conditioned.
Sure.
Is a name used by brewers in Ireland. Smithwick's is a typical example of a commercial Irish red ale. Never heard of it.
Me either.
There are many other examples being produced by Ireland's expanding craft beer industry. O'Hara's, 8 Degrees, and Franciscan Well all brew examples of Irish red ale. I think those are all...
Like O'Hare?
O'Hara's.
O'Hara's.
All Irish breweries, I would presume. There is some dispute as to whether Irish red ale is a genuine style or the same as English keg bitter.
There's so many different ones.
They don't know if it's its own unique thing. In the United States, the name can describe a darker amber ale or a red beer that is a lager with caramel coloring.
Okay.
Per craftbeer.com, I've been including some of these in our beer things now. Irish red ale is known for its unique malty taste and is on the lower side of the bitterness and alcohol content scales. Good to pair with roasted vegetables, cheddar cheese, and poached pears.
Oh, cheddar cheese is my favorite.
It's 5.6% ABV, 30 IBU, and 15 SRM. Let's pull up that SRM chart for
reference, please.
For old time's sake.
Thank you.
15.
Okay. What the fuck is 1?
That's got to be like a Hefeweizen.
That looks like milk.
Yeah, it's very light. It's got to be like, Hefeweizens have a very light. We talked about Hefeweizens earlier. Yeah. Almost like a Blue Moonish beer, but Blue Moon's darker. It's even lighter than that.
Yeah.
Beer Advocate gives it a score of 83.
Okay.
Good.
That's not bad.
Ranked number 51 in Irish red ales.
Okay.
36,850 overall.
Not great.
Average rating of 3.71. So you said we got to start picking lower rated.
I was kidding.
Beers. This just happens to be not quite as good as some of the ones that we've historically been having.
Yeah.
Remember the one that I wanted had a score of 91, ranked 4,697.
That one would have been great.
But I am very excited to try this one.
This is why I don't research beers anymore. I just go to Binny's and let whatever happens happen, and then I research.
Yeah, I try not to look at the score before
because you will be let down.
Yeah, you kind of changes your opinion, and you want to go with a different beer.
Exactly.
It tastes better. So.
I just find the title, and I was like, oh wow, what a coincidence! Yeah. It's good.
But I didn't do that with this. I picked the beer and then I looked at the score. So I'm excited to try it. It's our first Irish red ale.
Yeah, we never done one.
Hopefully it tastes good.
I'd like to do a sour that I actually like.
I do want to try a sour ale or a goza soon. That's not salty and limey. It tastes like the ocean.
Shark anus. Wow, that is some interesting can art. It kind of looks like she's a corn on the cob that's on fire. Like they haven't shucked her yet. It's a woman in a bra with like very bright red hair. And she's got like a skirt on that looks like leaves and they're on fire. So she looks like unshucked corn. Or maybe like, was it an artichoke?
For you open it. Yeah, a little bit.
Because it looks like if you turn the can, it looks like little artichokes are like launching off on fire.
Oh yeah, it does. Those are hops though.
I know, but they look like artichokes.
They do. This is cool. If you go to their website, tightheadbrewing.com, this is the first thing you see. Scarlet Fire.
Corn.
It's a pop-up. It won the Great American Beer Festival Award in Denver, Colorado. There's no year on it.
Okay.
It won that. And then if you're 21 or older, I think I am. Last time I checked. And then the main thing is this design with that lady and the landscape. If you go to their beers, and there's Scarlet Fire. It's the same image. So their entire website is stylized like this beer, around this beer. So this is probably one of their, I would presume, their flagship
most
beers.
known, well-known beers. Make sure you take a picture of this.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Ooh, that smells good. This is the kind of beer that I like.
Oh, it does smell good.
Oop.
Very pleasant. Oh, please don't spill. And there you go. Right on your shirt.
Yeah, a little drop.
Oh, I'm foamy.
It's about getting a balance between no foam in the glass and then getting a nice pour sound.
When I turn it, I'm always worried that I'm going to spill on your couch. So then I'm just like, okay, pour higher.
Yeah.
So then you can't spill on his couch because it's a nice couch.
It's fine.
We need a different setup. I think we need like lawn chairs or something.
Yeah, but you can't really.
That is a thick foam.
You can't really get no foam without getting a good pour sound.
Yeah.
You got to sacrifice one for the other. So you got a nice pour sound.
I gave you a good pour sound.
I appreciate it.
So there we go.
I'll let your foam settle a bit.
Yeah, that's a thick foam though. I always find it interesting how foam is different per beer, and that is a very thick foam.
I wonder what that means.
Like
when the foam settles and it's thick.
Yeast.
Maybe.
Because look at that.
It is. It's not moving. It's not subsiding at all. It's just kind of hanging out.
Very thick foam.
That is a nice deep reddish color. I like the look of this beer.
Yeah, they were right. It is very red. I like the smell. That's enjoyable. But yeah, like look at that fucking foam. That is very thick. That's not gonna go down.
It's gonna be a while. We can wait a little bit. Yeah, it smells.
It smells good.
It smells a little yeasty.
I'm upset that I drank coffee before
sweet.
this because it's gonna throw off my palate.
Well, we're gonna drink 2 other beers. After we got a couple bonus episodes.
Please lightly clink. Ugh, made me so nervous. Sorry, I had to get through all the foam. It's a lot of foam. It's kind of bland. I'm gonna go for another sip just because maybe it was foam. I can't tell.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of like flavors like I guess popping out at you. Nothing super intense.
Very smooth.
Very smooth.
Not bitter in any way. Like the hops is not very noticeable. Very smooth, but it's like bland, and then it gets to the back of your throat. And I always bring up the back of the throat feel, like the flavor for it, and it is nice and smooth and thick on the tongue.
Toasty.
It feels good. Like it's got a good mouthfeel. But I would say that overall flavor is very quiet.
Yes.
It is not a loud beer.
It's a little tame.
Smell is good, but I would also say there's this taste that kind of makes me think of, and I hate to say this because it's a very well crafted beer, that kind of makes me think of a musty towel.
Musty towel.
Yeah, and I feel bad saying that because
tasting notes,
this is
musty
an enjoyable beer, but it's like there's like a musty towel feel to it.
Maybe there's a mustiness to it. I think it's a little spicy, a little toasty. For me, this is like a comfort beer.
I don't know about a comfort beer.
At least for me, it kind of it sits along the edge of like almost stoutish, almost porter-ish. I would say a little more porter-ish. It kind of is reminiscent.
It's not exciting. I would say it is comforting. There you go. It's a simple beer, but it is brewed well. It is very smooth. Like I enjoy the mouthfeel of this. There's just not a lot of taste to it for me. I don't really notice it. It's very, very subtle.
I think if we're comparing it to some of our other...
we've had some very odd beers.
Yeah, some of our other more higher ranked by us beers.
Yeah.
Which were very fruity and very hoppy.
Yes.
They were definitely lighter than this.
Did you get a picture?
I'll get a picture here.
I'm not blown away, but I enjoy it. It's a good beer. I'd drink this again.
Yeah.
But I probably wouldn't like stockpile it, you know? I don't know. I definitely get tasting of like toasted and caramel. It's an interesting beer.
It is, toasty. I don't know. It seemed like I could imagine myself sitting by a campfire and like.
It does kind of. Is it all year or is it rotating?
I think it's year round.
Okay, it feels like kind of like a fall winter beer.
Yeah, reminiscent of like almost like an Oktoberfest kind of style dark beer. To me, it reminds me of a porter.
I would say for my first introduction to a red Irish ale, that's good.
It is good.
That's a good way to introduce myself to the type of beer.
Okay. Oh, my arm.
I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. All right, spontaneous human combustion, but also spontaneous combustion. So, the definition of spontaneous combustion or spontaneous ignition is a type of combustion which occurs by self-heating, which is an increase in temperature due to exothermic internal reactions. Which exothermic reactions is a reaction which is the overall standard change of, it's a symbol, it's like a mathematic symbol.
Okay.
And I don't know how to say it, but it's like a whole math equation, I guess.
Very sciencey, mathy.
Yeah, I'm not good at math. I'm, in fact, terrible at math. Like, oh boy. But it's an ectothermic internal reaction, followed by thermal runaway, which is self-heating, which rapidly accelerates to high temperatures. And finally, autoignition, which autoignition, or kindling point, is a substance, or the autoignition temperature or kindling point of a substance is the lowest temperature in which it spontaneously ignites. In a normal atmosphere without an external source of ignition, such as a flame or spark. So this is going to be a very sciencey episode.
Something that has the potential to catch on fire that reaches a certain temperature to where it can.
Yes. So for non-human combustion, it can occur with substances with relatively low ignition temperatures, such as hay, straw, and peat. It begins to release heat. It may occur in several ways, either by oxidation, in the presence of moisture in air, or bacterial fermentation, which generates heat. The heat is unable to escape, and the temperature of the material rises. The temperature of the material rises above its ignition point. Even though much of the bacteria are destroyed by ignition temperatures, combustion begins if sufficient oxidizers such as oxygen and fuel are present to prevent or to maintain the reaction into thermal runaway. And then confirmed materials that can ignite spontaneously: hay piles, compost piles, and that's because of bacterial fermentation, linseed oil and Danish oil in a confined space, such as a pile of oil-soaked rags left out in an uncovered container, especially if rags afterwards used with anti-moisture solvent to clean up the oil, can oxidize, leading to a buildup of heat and thus ignition. Coal can ignite spontaneously when exposed to oxygen.
Wow.
Pyrite oxidation is often the cause of coal spontaneous ignition in old mine tailings. Pistachio nuts are highly flammable when stored in large quantities and are prone to self-heating and spontaneous combustion.
Interesting.
Large manure piles can spontaneously combust during conditions of extreme heat. Cotton and linen can ignite when they come into contact with vegetable oils that are polyunsaturated. Bacteria slowly decompose the materials, producing heat. If these materials are stored in a way so that the heat cannot escape, the heat buildup increases the rate of decomposition, and thus the rate of heat buildup increases. Once ignition temperature is reached, combustion occurs with oxidizers present, so oxygen.
Yep.
And then nitrite film, when improperly stored, can deteriorate into an extremely flammable condition and combust.
I love pistachios.
Yeah, I know. That's why I brought it up.
Just throwing that out there.
Spontaneous human combustion, or SHC, is the concept of the combustion of a living or recently deceased human body without an apparent external source of ignition, like a spark or a flame. In addition to reported cases, descriptions of the alleged phenomena appear in literature, and both types have been observed to share common characteristics in terms of circumstances and the remains of the victim. Scientific investigators have attempted to analyze reported instances of SHC and have resulted in hypotheses regarding potential causes and mechanisms, including victim behavior and habits, alcohol consumption, and proximity to potential sources of ignition, as well as the behavior of fires that consume melted fats.
Yep.
I would go up in flames. Natural explanations, as well as unverified natural phenomena, have been proposed to explain reports of SHC. Current scientific consensus is that most and perhaps all cases of SHC involve overlooked external sources of ignition. Spontaneous human combustion refers to the death from a fire originating without an apparent external source of ignition. The fire is believed to start within the body of the victim. This idea and the term spontaneous human combustion were first proposed in 1746 by Paul Rowley in an article published in the Philosophical Transactions concerning mysterious death of Countess Cornelia Bandy. Writing in the British Medical Journal in 1938, coroner Gavin Thurston describes the phenomenon as having apparently attracted the attention not only of the medical profession, but of the laity 100 years ago, which is all members who are not part of the clergy, I guess.
Okay.
Non-ordained members, something like that. Oh, that's my part. Where was I? There we go. 100 years ago, referring to a fictional account published in 1834 in the Frederick Marryat cycle.
Frederick Marryat cycle.
Marryat.
Huh.
Marryat. He was a Royal Navy officer and novelist, and an acquaintance of Charles Dickens. In his 1995 book, Ablaze, with an exclamation point, Larry E. Arnold wrote that there had been about 200 cited reports of spontaneous human combustion worldwide over a period of around 300 years.
Wow. It's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, I know, right? I thought this was like a phenomena. Like, it doesn't happen that often. The topic received coverage in the British Medical Journal in 1938. An article by L.A. Perry cited an 1823 published book, Medical Jurisprudence, something like that, which stated that Kamala Harris. Common aspects.
It just shut down.
Yeah. Among recorded cases of spontaneous human combustion included the following characteristics. They have these things in common. The victims are chronic alcoholics.
Yep.
They are usually elderly females.
Oh.
The body has not burned spontaneously, but some lighted substance has come into contact with it. The hands and feet usually fall off. The fire has caused very little damage to combustible things in contact with the body. And the combustion of the body has left a residue of greasy and fetid ashes, very offensive in odor.
Gross.
Right? Alcoholism is a common theme in early SHC literary references, in part because some Victorian-era physicians and writers believed spontaneous human combustion was the result of alcoholism. So if you drank and you were the village drunk, you were going to ignite at any point in time. That's why you didn't have friends. An extensive 2-year research project involving 30 historical cases of SHC was conducted in 1984 by science investigator Joe Nickel and forensic analyst John F. Fisher. Their lengthy 2-part report was published in the Journal of the International Association of Arson Investigators. Well, I didn't know that was a thing, but now I need a subscription. As well as a part of a book. Nickel has written frequently on the subject, appeared on television documentaries, conducted additional research, and lectured at the New York State Academy of Fire Science at Montour Falls, New York, as a guest instructor. Nickel and Fisher's investigation, which looked at cases in the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, showed that the burned bodies were close to plausible sources for the ignition. Candles, lamps, fireplaces, and so on. Such sources were often omitted from published accounts of these incidents, presumably to deepen the aura of mystery surrounding an apparently spontaneous death. The investigators also found that there was a correlation between alleged SHC deaths and the victim's intoxication or other forms of incapacitation, which could conceivably have caused them to be careless and unable to respond properly to an accident. Where the destruction of the body was not particularly extensive, you're almost done with that, a primary source of combustible fuel could plausibly have been the victim's clothing or a covering, such as a blanket or comforter. However, where the destruction was extensive, additional fuel sources were involved, such as chair stuffing, floor coverings, the flooring itself, and the like. The investigators described how such materials helped to retain melted fat, which caused more of the body to be burned and destroyed, yielding still more liquefied fat in a cyclic process known as the wick effect or the candle effect.
Yep.
According to Nickel and Fisher's investigations, nearby objects often remained undamaged because fire tends to burn upward, but burns laterally with some difficulty. The fires in question are relatively small, achieving considerable destruction by the wick effect, and relatively nearby objects may not be close enough to catch fire themselves, much as the one can closely approach a modest campfire without burning. As with other mysteries, Nickel and Fisher cautioned against single, simplistic explanations for all unusual burning deaths, but rather urged investigating on an individual basis. Neurologist Stephen Novella has said that skepticism about spontaneous human combustion is now bleeding over into becoming popular skepticism about spontaneous combustion. A 2002 study by Agni M. Christensen of the University of Tennessee cremated both healthy and osteoporotic samples of human bone and compared the resulting color changes and fragmentation. The study found that the osteoporotic bones samples consistently displayed more discoloration and a greater degree of fragmentation than healthy ones. The same study found that when human tissue is burned, the resulting flame produces a small amount of heat, indicating that fire is unlikely to spread from burning tissue.
I don't even know what osteoporosis is.
I don't remember. I knew it. Now I don't remember. Suggested explanations for it. Some hypotheses attempt to explain how SHC might occur without an external flame source, while other hypotheses suggest that incidents that might appear as spontaneous combustion did in fact have an external source of ignition, and that the likelihood of spontaneous human combustion without an external ignition source is quite low.
Right.
Benjamin Radford, science writer and deputy editor of the Science Museum's Skeptical Inquirer, casts doubt on the plausibility of spontaneous human combustion. If SHC is a real phenomenon and not the result of an elderly or infirm person being too close to an open source of flame, why doesn't it happen more often? There are 5 billion people in the world, which this was 1987. And yet we don't see reports of people bursting into flame while walking down the street, attending football games, or sipping coffee at a local Starbucks. Paranormal researcher Brian Dunning states that SHC stories are simply the rare cases where a natural death in isolation has been followed by a slow combustion from some nearby source of ignition. He further suggested that reports of people suddenly aflame should be called unsolved deaths by fire, stating that an unknown cause did not necessarily imply that the fire lacked an external ignition source. Almost all postulated cases of SHC involve persons with low mobility due to advanced age or obesity, along with poor health. Victims show a high likelihood of having died in their sleep or of having been unable to move once they had caught fire. Which, imagine that. Engulfed in flames and you cannot move.
How awful.
Just lie there in agony. Cigarettes are often seen at the source of fire, as the improper disposal of smoking material causes 1 in every 4 fire deaths in the United States. Natural causes such as heart attacks may lead to the victim dying, subsequently dropping the cigarette, which after a period of smoldering can ignite the victim's clothes.
Yep.
The wick effect hypotheses suggest that a small external flame source, such as the burning cigarette, charged the clothing of the victim at a location, splitting the skin and releasing subcutaneous fat, which is in turn absorbed into the burned clothing, acting as a wick. This combustion can continue for as long as the fuel is available. This hypothesis has been successfully tested with pig tissue and is consistent with evidence recovered from cases of human combustion. The human body typically has enough stored energy and fat and other chemical sources to fully combust the body. Even lean people have several pounds of fat in their tissues. This fat, once heated by the burning clothing, wicks into the clothing much as a candle wax, which originally was typically made of animal fat. It is drawn into a lit candle wick, providing the fuel needed to keep the wick burning. The protein in the body also burns, but provides less energy than the fat, with the water in the body being the main impediment to combustion. However, slow combustion lasting hours gives the water time to evaporate slowly. In an enclosed area, such as a house, this moisture will recondense nearby, possibly on windows. Feet don't typically burn because they often have the least fat. Hands also have little fat, but may burn if resting on the abdomen, which provides all of the necessary fat for combustion. Scalding can cause burn-like injuries, sometimes leading to death, without setting fire to clothing. Although not applicable in cases where the body is charred and burnt, this has been suggested as a cause in an event at least once claimed SHC-like. Brian J. Ford has suggested that ketosis, possibly caused by alcoholism or low-carb dieting, produces acetone, which is highly flammable and could therefore lead to apparently spontaneous combustion. SHC can be confused with self-immolation as a form of suicide. In the West, self-immolation accounts for 1% of suicides, while Radford claims in developing countries the figure can be high as 40%.
I can't imagine, like... You ever think about, like, the worst ways to go?
Yeah.
That's definitely one of
them.
Drowning is probably, yeah. Well, I would probably put self-immolation worse than that.
I hate the idea of drowning.
I hate the idea of drowning, too, but I can't imagine sitting there suffering while on fire for, like, painful agony.
Poor witches.
You know? Yeah. Drowning's up there, though. But, man, that just sounds awful.
Sometimes there are reasonable explanations for the deaths, but proponents ignore official autopsies and contradictory of evidence in favor of anecdotal accounts and personal testimonies. Mast cell researcher Lawrence Afrin, MD, posits that a rare condition called mast cell activation syndrome may be the cause of the phenomenon. In MCAS, mast cells were spontaneously release over 200 inflammatory molecules known as mediators, including the substance noradrenaline, something like that. Noradrenaline, I think. Mm-hmm. Or adrenaline. Afrin describes a case report of a man with MCAS who grew ill and appeared to smoke in the presence of several witnesses. Afrin writes that the release of large amounts of noradrenaline or whatever, it's like norepinephrine. Norepinephrine, yeah, something like that. Or perhaps another mast cell-derived substance, could turn on a regulatory protein called UCP1 in greater than normal amounts. UCP1 causes adipose oxidation to be released as heat. Adipose tissue is a known repository of mast cells. Under the right circumstances, a sudden flood of norepinephrine, did I say that right? Released from adipose mast cells could activate the UCP1 switch and cause heat generation in excess of 90 degrees Celsius. Once the adipose tissue were ignited, it would, in theory, burn itself out, inclusive of bone marrow. You're so quiet. Give me your opinion.
It's all very sciencey and extremely interesting.
My last point, and then I have an article.
Okay.
British chemist Dr. John Emsley, which very British name, suggests that cases of spontaneous human combustion could be the result of an overproduction of pyrophoric liquid in the gut. He postulates that the self-combustion of the pyrophoric liquid is called diphosphane, something like that. I don't know.
Diphosphane?
Yes. Thank you. When I see eyes, I want to go, not eye. I don't want to go for the hard eye. I want to go for the light eye. So, would also result in the ignition of the hydrogen and methane gases in the gut, which would explain witness cases where blue flames were seen to originate from the abdomen, as methane burns with a pale blue flame.
Holy cow.
Just say that. How many examples did you go over? Did you go over Mary Reeser?
3, 4.
I just won't go over any of them.
I did.
Okay, I won't go any of them.
Mm-hmm. It's very sciencey. It does provide some. It's always the debate between science versus like fantasy and like what's the word I'm looking for?
Fallacy.
Like supernatural phenomena type deal. Science versus phenomena.
Yeah. Phenomena.
So you provided a lot of examples as to, that would explain a lot of these situations. I'm going to cover a few cases, but
I'm not done. There's an article I found called "How to Avoid Spontaneously Combusting."
Oh, good.
It was by Ross Pomeroy, and it was written in 2012. Mm-hmm. And there's a picture of a woman drinking gasoline on it. So this is off to a good start. It is a nagging worry that constantly loiters in the recesses of the mind. Will today be the day that I spontaneously combust? I'm hard-pressed to think of a worse way to go. One day you might be walking down the street, suffering from a faint tinge of indigestion, when suddenly, poof, you're up in flames. Or perhaps you might be slouched in an armchair, lightly dozing and watching football, when the temperature of the living room unexpectedly jumps a few hundred degrees. Nope, that's not the furnace malfunctioning. It's just your torso on fire. The only consolation of combustion is this. The unadulterated pain would rapidly trigger the body's vasovagal reflex, something like that, inducing welcome, numbing unconsciousness in a matter of seconds.
Good.
There are no credible eyewitness accounts of spontaneous combustion, but the aftermath is described like so. Remains are found in the form of an ash heap
but the legs remain relatively unscathed. Furthermore, the surroundings show minimal signs of fire damage. Only the deceased seems to have burned. Fewer than 150 cases of spontaneous human combustion have been reported over the last 2,000 years. The rareness has rightfully engendered the skepticism as to whether the condition truly exists. Mm-hmm. After all, the human body is approximately 60% water. It's simply not flammable. Yet, the unexplained cases still beg an explanation. And it just goes into what I talked about already, that the main theory was alcoholism. I just thought the opening was funny.
I liked your point about how that one guy, I already forgot his name, he said that these cases should be examined on a case-by-case basis, that you can't take one blanket explanation of all of these things and apply them to all of these things, because they likely, a lot of these deaths likely happened in different ways.
Let me give you the 2 steps that you need to do to avoid spontaneously combusting.
Please.
Avoid activities and diets which promote ketosis, the bodily state where levels of ketones, like acetone, are elevated. So if you are into a keto-based diet, you are going to combust.
You will ignite up in flames.
These include alcoholism, starvation, and diets based on low carbohydrate and high fat protein intake. And then step 2, because there are only 2, avoid potentially dangerous sources of flame or high temperature, especially when drowsy, and do not smoke. That's it. That's how you avoid it, people.
The second one seems pretty self-explanatory.
Done it, though. Not to the people who fall asleep smoking.
I don't follow a keto diet.
Oh, you'll be fine then.
I do drink beer every week.
Yeah, but you're not an alcoholic, and you're not fat, so I think you'll be fine. I, on the other hand, am an alcoholic and fat.
I do have a high carbohydrate diet.
Same.
I don't think you're not an alcoholic. What are you talking about? Shut up. You drink about the same amount of alcohol as I do.
I drink more than you do, but I am not an alcoholic.
I don't know about that. See, the result of the show too, I can't. Like when we went to Mater's and they were like, "Are you both beer drinkers?" It's like, I mean, yeah, little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And I almost ordered one of their German beers, but it's like I drink beer every week for the show. I can't drink beer anywhere else. It feels like, because I don't want to overdo it on the beer.
It does become difficult.
Yeah. No, but to reiterate, I do like that point that there's probably very likely that there are scientific explanations for a lot of these deaths, and they're all going to be different from each other. So you can't just.
But it is fun to think that something like that is a thing.
Right. So use your imagination.
Please.
I go over a few cases, so you decide whether or not you think that this was caused by
people at home,
like science, or if this was some sort of unexplainable phenomena.
Did you like my surprise that I left for you in the last episode? Why'd you whisper it to yourself? Like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
The song that I played for you. Did you not listen?
No, what song? The coconut song?
No. Well, you were in the bathroom when we did our last episode. I played a song.
What song?
The entirety of the song.
I probably cut it. What song?
Never mind.
No, I skip around. I don't listen to the whole thing. It's like if there's a large gap of silence where I leave and go to the bathroom, I find the next point where we start talking and I cut that entire segment because there's nothing in there that. What song did you play?
Magic School Bus.
Oh. Well, I know you I left it in the Sirens episode. Yeah, there were a few songs that you played. Was the last episode here, or was it at your place?
Here.
Okay, maybe I cut it. I need to use the restroom. Fuck yeah. All right. Fuck yeah. So I cover a few stories. Some are longer than others. Some I just quickly sum up in a paragraph or so, but some others I go into a little bit more detail.
I look forward to hearing your voice.
Of the unlucky people who
have spontaneously combusted.
Met spontaneous human combustion as their fate.
Supposedly.
I pulled a lot of this is just word for word from articles that I found on these people. The first one, it's a story from St. Petersburg Times, dated Thursday, July 5th, 1951.
Okay.
This is the one that I think you were talking about. It's titled, it's actually pulled from a newspaper. It says, "No new clues in Reeser death. Debris sent to lab," by Jerry Blizin.
Oh, that's the title?
That's the title of the article.
Interesting.
Again, this is in a newspaper,
okay.
Physical newspaper.
What newspaper?
St. Petersburg Times.
Okay, thank you. I just need to hear it.
Detectives yesterday finished packing the last of several boxes of material salvaged from an apartment at 1200 Cherry Street, Northeast, where Mrs. Mary Hardy Reeser, 67, was burned to death in a mystery fire Monday. The boxes will be sent off today to the FBI laboratory in Washington for chemical analysis. Included in the material sent are portions of the apartment rug, smoke samples, rubble from the walls and floor, and segments of the chair in which Mrs. Reeser was last known to be sitting. Mm-hmm. A blaze of necessarily white, hot intensity disintegrated the body of Mrs. Reeser, a robust woman who weighed about 170 pounds. Yeah, that's
wow,
robust.
That's so robust.
All that remained was a foot, curiously intact and without indication of charring, clad in a black house shoe. The shoe, previously identified as a suede shoe, yesterday was proven to be a black satin bedroom slipper. Meanwhile, Detective Chief Cass Burgess stated yesterday that he would wait until a chemical analysis report could be returned before making any statement as to what caused the blaze or what put it out. Quote, "This fire is a curious thing," Burgess said, "and I've been deluged by letters and phone calls offering solutions to the problems facing us," end quote. Magistrate Ed Silk, who acts as coroner in the case yesterday, said he'd received at least 15 phone calls from amateur detectives. Burgess said an unsigned letter arrived yesterday morning addressed to Chief of Detectives, and that's detective spelled DETECTIFFS.
Detectives. They're kind of detectives, but not really.
The letter said that a ball of fire came through the open window and hit her. "I seen it happen."
I seen it happen.
Curiously, they...
Are you hooked on phonics?
They talk about ball lightning,
oh.
Which we covered in a previous story that may have been a cause. Silk reported that people had told him a kapok cushion, K-A-P-O-K, kapok cushion, and the overstuffed chair did the deed, while others put the blame on ether, kerosene, napalm, thermite bombs, magnesium, and phosphorus. Almost all of these, Silk said, produce a noticeable odor, an odor which was not detected at the Alamanda Apartments scene of the fire. Silk, Tuesday night, signed the death certificate for Mrs. Reeser, terming it, quote, "accidental death by fire of unknown origin." The certificate is marked tentative, pending further investigation, he added. Quote, "This does not mean we're concluding the investigation," the magistrate told the Times, "but is merely giving a release for burial, and it can be amended at any time." That's that story. Mm-hmm. Mary Reeser. Steph told me that there is a BuzzFeed Unsolved video on Mary Reeser. We should watch that right now. I think we took a lot of breaks in this episode.
We really did. I keep having to pee.
Oh, we watched the BuzzFeed Unsolved video on Mary Reeser's death. You should check it out on YouTube. BuzzFeed Unsolved, good video.
I don't think it really adds to anything.
I don't know. I liked it. We pretty much, but yeah, we covered everything that they talked about. So, this second article. It's actually snippets from an article on irishtimes.com. Mm-hmm. It's called Ashes and Cinders, a Spontaneous Combustion on Prussia Street.
That sounds a little...
By Dean Ruxton, dated February 4th, 2018. Okay. This occurred March 28th, 1970.
Okay.
The walls of the front room of number 33 Prussia Street were covered in black, fat-laden smuts. Plastic flowers on a table in the center of the room had been reduced to liquid, and a television with a melted screen set 12 feet from an armchair containing the ashen remains of Margaret Hogan. Her body had been burned almost to the point of complete destruction by a fire. However, her surroundings were, for the most part, untouched by flames. The lady had been reduced to a little pile of ashes. It was just 2 little ankles sticking out, recalls Brady, speaking to Lost Leads. There had been evidence in the room of the most intense of heat. The television set was burned into a blob in the corner, but there was very little evidence of fire, a bit of charring around where she was sitting. On March 27, 1970, Mrs. Rigney called into Mrs. Hogan's house at about 4 p.m. She washed Mrs. Hogan's feet and her hair before leaving her in her usual health, sitting in an armchair by the fire. At 9:30 a.m. the following morning, Mrs. Hogan's remains were discovered. The damage caused to her body was extensive, so much so that a pathologist who carried out the post-mortem on the remains said that he had never seen such a complete destruction of human tissue. Reads the report Brady wrote for the Irish Times, published on May 12, 1970. Although the majority of her body had been turned to ashes and cinders, her 2 feet from below the knees had been undamaged. Apart from the chair in which the dead woman had been sitting and a square yard of linoleum and some rug directly under the remains, there was no damage from the fire in the room. While it was clear Mrs. Hogan had died due to burning, there was no apparent clues as to what started the fire. The room she was found in was 5-sided, and a small coal fire had been burning in the grate when Mrs. Rigney left the house. However, no connection could be found between this fire and that in which Mrs. Hogan died. Self-immolation was ruled out. The idea of spontaneous combustion, a forensic term used to describe a fire with an obvious cause, arose. At the time, Dr. Boffin concluded he had no doubt Mrs. Hogan died from burning. The circumstances of the burning are unusual and would conform to what is called spontaneous combustion, he said, adding that the term does not mean that the fires are in fact spontaneous in origin. It's simply a term carried out in forensic literature to describe a set of circumstances in which a person is burned to death without an obvious source of the fire. This is a point stressed by Brady. The phenomenon reposes in the extreme degree of destruction. Nobody seriously argues that people burst into flames on their own. In theory, a spark from the fire could have ignited Mrs. Hogan's clothes. However, the story notes it was difficult to visualize such utter destruction of human tissue arising from a fire of this nature. But it is even more difficult to conceive of such a fire reducing a body, bones included, to ashes and cinders without causing a conflagration in the room. The inquest, held on April 3rd, recorded death by burning with the cause of the fire listed as unknown. Door-to-door Garda inquiries, not published at the time, uncovered witnesses who reported seeing a ball of orange light near Mrs. Hogan's window. It was not clear what that could have been. The idea of a lightning strike or perhaps even ball lightning was proffered, though it may have been the glow of light of the fire. High blood alcohol, methane in the digestive system, and static electricity are among the potential causes that have been used to explain the phenomenon. A modern theory, often used to describe the intense burning of SHC victims, is the Wick effect. Writing in the wake of the 2011 verdict, Irish Times columnist and emeritus professor of biochemistry at UCC, William Revell, summed it up by describing the human body as an inside-out candle. The theory assumes an external source of ignition which lights the person's clothes. A person's skin may then split, which releases subcutaneous fat, which acts like a wax in a candle. I think you talked about this in your section.
I did.
The fat then soaks into the wick, and burning continues as it does in a normal candle.
Yes.
Scientists remain skeptical of using the term spontaneous human combustion. Writing in the journal Forensic Science, Medicine and Pathology in 2016, Professor Roger Byard of the University of Adelaide's Medical Science Unit says researchers prefer isolated body combustion, as there is always an external source of heat to ignite the body. It would seem reasonable.
I went over that too.
It would seem reasonable to relegate spontaneous human combustion to the category of urban myth, he concluded. I meant to preface by saying, while you were doing your section, I recognized some quotes and paragraphs in there, so I'm probably going to be going over some of the similar things you talked about. This is my second to last story.
Okay.
These are a little smaller.
Oh, good.
Henry Thomas.
Sorry.
Henry Thomas, a 73-year-old man, was found burned to death in the living room of his council house on the Rousseau estate in Vale
Nailed it.
in South Wales in 1980. His entire body was incinerated, leaving only his skull and a portion of each leg below the knee. The feet and legs were still clothed in socks and trousers. Half of the chair in which he had been sitting was also destroyed. Police forensic officers decided that the incineration of Thomas was due to the wick effect. Last story. Michael Faherty. They talk about him in the BuzzFeed video that we watched. He was a 76-year-old man who was found burned to death in the living room of his home in Clairview Park, Ballybane, Galloway, Ireland, on December 22nd, 2010. In the early hours of December 22, 2010, Faherty's neighbor, Mr. Magnon, was awakened by the sound of his smoke alarm. Magnon went outside to find heavy smoke coming from Faherty's house. Getting no answer from Faherty's house, he aroused local residents and the Gardaí.
It sounded like you said he aroused.
He aroused local residents and the Gardaí, which is, I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's Ireland's national police, known as the Guardians. Fucking badass.
Probably like Gaelic or something.
And the fire brigade was called. Faherty's...
The fire brigade doesn't get a fancy name?
No, just the fire brigade.
Sounds unfair.
Faherty's home was searched by forensic experts from the Gardaí and the fire service. Faherty's body had been found lying on his back with his head closest to an open fireplace. The fire had been entirely confined to the sitting room, and the only damage found was to the totally burnt body, the ceiling above and the floor beneath him. No trace of any accelerants was found, and there was nothing to suggest foul play had taken place. Assistant Chief Fire Officer Gary O'Malley told the inquest into the death that after a thorough investigation, fire officers were satisfied that the open fire was not the cause of the blaze, which led to Faherty's death. A post-mortem carried out by pathologist Grace Callaghy noted that Faherty had suffered from type 2 diabetes and hypertension, but had not died from heart failure. Callaghy concluded that the extensive nature of the burn sustained precludes determining the precise cause of death. In September 2011, the West Galloway coroner, Dr. Ciaran McLaughlin, informed the inquiry into the death that he searched medical literature to determine the cause of death. The coroner referred to Professor Bernard Knight's book on forensic pathology, which states that a high number of alleged incidents of spontaneous human combustion had taken place near an open fireplace or chimney.
Okay.
The coroner subsequently made a statement to an inquiry. This fire was thoroughly investigated, and I'm left with the conclusion that this fits into the category of spontaneous human combustion, for which there is no adequate explanation. Mike Green, a retired professor of pathology, related one similar case in his career, but would not himself use the term spontaneous combustion. He believed there had to be some source of ignition, a cigarette or ember from a fire.
Yeah, I'm of that opinion too.
The source of the ignition is subsequently lost as the body burns. Green surmised that the circumstances surrounding the death of Michael Faherty were very similar to other possible cases. Green also dismissed any explanation centered on divine intervention.
Oh my God.
My last paragraph I recognize is something that you read, is Benjamin Radford. I think you covered him, the editor of Skeptical Inquirer.
Yep.
He said, Faherty's case may not be as mysterious as it looks. There was, after all, an open fire close to his burned body. It seems likely that a spark or ember might have popped from the fire onto his clothing and caught his clothing on fire. It's not clear why the coroner...
I did not go over that.
No, it's not clear why the coroner conclusively ruled this explanation out. But you did talk about, he says, if the same guy, if SHC is a real phenomenon, not the result of an elderly or infirm person being too close to a flame source, why doesn't it happen more often? So I don't think it's some phenomena.
I don't either. I don't think it's really a thing like that, like the wick effect or anything like that. I mean, I'm more apt to believe the wick effect if it was started by like an outside source, you know? I just don't believe that our bodies spontaneously combust like that.
And you did cover a wide variety of different materials that do have a certain combustion point in which they get hot enough to where they can spontaneously combust.
You know, oxidization, bacteria fermentation. So it's nothing that would just happen for us.
Right. So it's like, what in the body would cause that?
Exactly.
So, I don't know.
There's nothing that would cause that.
Right.
We inhale oxygen on the regular. So it's not like we're overly oxidized.
Yeah.
We're made up a lot of water. Like I could get it if it. I just think it's people who are in a situation in which they're unhealthy and or
have an illness that makes it so they cannot move and react, and they are in a situation where a spark happens.
Yeah, like an external flame source.
There's an external ignition. I don't think that it just happens.
But that's also true that that wouldn't diminish the possibility of like legs and arms and hands being left because there is less fatty tissue on them, so they don't burn quite the same way. However, it is perplexing that in every case, like it was hot enough to incinerate bone.
Yes, that is odd.
And then
not cause that much damage.
Yeah, the rest of the room. That's what is interesting.
That leaves me questioning.
Yeah.
But I have a hard time believing in spontaneous human combustion. But yeah, that is very odd. That's very odd circumstances. But I'm sure you could look up cases of like arson or something, or cases of fires, and there'd be instances in which certain areas did not catch fire because of a random thing. Yeah. And since they're so rare, they don't happen that often. You know, it could be that 1 in a million thing that keeps the rest of the house from burning down. You know.
Yeah, it's a very cool topic that I've heard about for a long time, but never really, dug into, like did a lot of thorough research into. So this is a cool episode. I'm glad we covered it. But it leaves a lot of room for interpretation, outside interpretation.
You are right.
Form your own conclusion, listeners.
There you go. What did you think of the beer?
Like you said, it was a very smooth, easy to drink ale. I found it just very, I don't know, just something comforting about it. And it was very easy to sip. It was nice and toasty. Yeah. It was spicy, but it wasn't anything extravagant.
Yeah, I started tasting the caramel a little bit more as I started drinking it more, and got around the foam. So it's not completely bland as I first felt that it was, but I'm not like, wow. This is,
Not blown away by it.
No, but it was very smooth. It was very pleasant to drink. It was very easy to sip. It was a good beer.
I like it. Yeah. And like you said, I would get it again. If I was out somewhere, I would get a second one.
In this instance, I would definitely I would get this.
And I bet
I would get a case of it, but I don't think I'd like go to a restaurant and order it again.
I gotcha.
But I just don't do that with drinks. Like I don't order multiples.
You like to switch it up. I don't know. And I would imagine it's probably a lot better with food too.
I would like to try it with the food that it recommended. Like it said sharp cheddar, right?
Yeah, like sharp cheddar
and toasted or poached pears,
or like was it like Mexican food?
I don't remember. I just remember sharp cheddar and poached pears. How do you poach a pear?
I know how to poach an egg.
Yeah.
I think it's quite the different process.
I would imagine.
No, not Mexican food. I said Mexican food. That's our next beer that we're trying. Good to pair with roasted vegetables, cheddar cheese, and poached pears.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it would taste very good with paired with a meal.
Well, I found it enjoyable.
It's good. beerandfearcast@gmail.com is our email.
Send it to us if you want to harass us, stalk us, or just wish us a happy day.
I maybe don't do those
okay, don't
things.
harass us or stalk us.
But like if you want to send us a story or something.
Okay, yeah.
That's fine. Or like say what up.
Sorry, don't harass us and stalk us. That's my bad. I was picking up on a different mood.
Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, posting pictures of our beer and pictures of Paige's pets, I'm sure will still continue.
I have a picture that I took of Wonton that I need to post.
Yes.
Little fucking weirdo.
And then we update the other socials with our newest episodes every week. Released every Wednesday at noon. So you can stay up to date with that.
Yes.
And we're gonna record 2 bonus episodes tonight, which are both beers. So we're gonna be drinking a lot more.
Yes.
So
hopefully I can drive home.
I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I want you to play Fallout New Vegas tonight.
Okay.
Let's see if we have time to do that.
All right.
And then have some time for Warcraft.
Yes, we've gotten back into World of Warcraft.
Because we're fucking nerds.
Yeah, we are. I'm planning on staying up late, so. Alrighty.
Cool. That's it.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.